All right. In a moment, we will be watching Tezuka versus Delial, I think for the weekly open. Um, Good game, of course. We might also get to watch them. I think they're playing in Triad Wars as well, which is a great match. Um, in general, so I just did this thing on hands, right? And it concluded that tournament making hands, they are both kind of median to slightly above median players, or average to slightly above average. I think both of those are true. But I don't think that captures it. Maybe we'll get more into that later. Um, what I want to say is I think Delial's advantage over Tezuka, and Delial's certainly favored, as great as Tezuka is, I think is probably higher in random than in hand games. As a point of comparison, to make this about me, which is not the goal, but Tezuka and I played a best of five match. I forget what it was for. It was the finals of something quite early on in the return, and there were two rule sets. I forget if it was two rule sets chosen by each of us or if it was all made, but there were two hand rule sets and two random rule sets. And then if we tied those, it went to a fifth game, which I think was also random. And the first game we finished was random, and I won. And the second one was hands, and he won. And the third was random, and I won. And the fourth was hands, and he won. And the fifth was random, and I won. It was a good match. You can check it out. I think that was during my 10 days of Tezuka, if you want coverage of that, where I just did Tezuka games for a week and a half. Um, but it is to say, I think Tezuka has pretty consistently put up better results in hand formats than in random formats. Which is also to say, though he's put up very good results in both, that my numbers that output Tezuka as being a slightly above average hand maker, but not a particularly notable one, are very likely missing something because he clearly performs better in hand formats. Obviously TTAC was the big one. He wins his tournament, and in just crushing style. And oftentimes with hands, for instance, in the final against Piggyman, where he plays this weak corner starter that the solver is not impressed by. But notably, I thought, what do I think the best move against this is? And I thought there was a strong opposite corner. And I asked Deli what he thought the best move was. And he thought a strong opposite corner. We both focused on the same move. And I asked the solver, and it said that move is losing, right? Um, so the solver said there weren't many moves that lose, but the moves that looked most strikingly powerful. And in my interview with Piggy, I mentioned that move, and he's like, "Oh, now I feel like an idiot. I should have played that." But it was losing, right? This was not actually a good move, but it was incredibly tempting. It looked really strong to me on kind of every heuristic. So what I want to say about Tezuka's hand making is I think if you look at what my scoring systems say about how the hand looks and his starters, it is not impressed. However, if you check in on move 3, whether or not he makes move 3 or his opponents make move 3, in hand games, it is very impressed by Tezuka's positions. It thinks, okay, his hand wasn't very good, his first move wasn't necessarily great, but by the kind of second move each players are making, it goes, wow, he's playing phenomenal. And for that to consistently happen means there's something earlier happening that it is taking a while to identify. Um, and so it might be that Tezuka is playing hands where maybe they're not that great, but his comfort level with them is high enough and he is strong enough at using them that by turn 3 to 4, suddenly those hands are likely to be in a really good situation. It is also possible, though, that the hands are just much better than what it's implying. That fundamentally he is making decisions where his opponents have many tying moves this turn, but no matter what they do, they will have very few tying moves next turn and be under substantial pressure. But this happens much more frequently in Tezuka's hand games than his random games, where he gets this jump around turn 3 in win odds. So I think that's interesting, and I don't really have a good conclusion there. I thought they were supposed to be starting. I did not intend to actually babble for very long. I just thought, okay, the game went up, Deli will take it in a moment, and we can just start babbling and hopefully won't run out of things to say. But I think Tezuka's a really interesting player because he's doing something specifically with hands that is hard for the numbers I have to fully grasp. So I expect in this random game, I think Deli's playing great right now. I haven't seen a lot of Tezuka recently. I expect Deli to win this one with pretty high likelihood. On the other hand, their Triad Wars 16 game, I think, is much closer. Yeah, they are playing for that. Interestingly, no combo. I don't know what to make of no combo for them. Huh. Okay, game has been taken. All right, so we have all rules in effect, except same wall, but same wall is not relevant. Deli has first turn, so let's check Tezuka's hand first per usual. 7 to the right, 6s in other directions. That means Deli's only 6-6 corner is covered. Deli has no entirely safe corners, but he could look to play something that creates some kind of challenge. It's actually a little clunky to create a challenge because any kind of high number he is facing out, he either doesn't have the capture or so many of them are to the left that Tezuka doesn't actually have a problem taking them with his 7 to the right. So I'm gonna keep talking about the babble I was talking about, which is I think this game Deli is bigger favorite than in the hand game, but the hand game is no combo. And I talk sometimes about players I think riffing off Star Wars that I think are combo sensitive, that just have a really nice feel for both combo chains and when combos will matter and when they won't. And Deli and Tezuka are two players I would put maybe not the furthest of anyone into that category, but quite far into that category. And so seeing them without combo is going to be interesting. Also, it's a very long, it has the potential to be a long match without combo. Having watched the game so far, we saw one really long match between Selder and Sir Smokes. But actually, that kind of convinced me that it's a more interesting rule set than you might think, because there were a bunch of wins missed in that matchup. There was one Sir Smokes pointed out immediately where he thought he was lost, and I checked with the solver and he was lost. And he could have made a very slightly different move to not be lost, but it was very difficult at distance to see the differences between the moves. Basically, in a game that was going that was going to be, all the captures were going to be to the left, he needed to hold on to a 6 to the right to not get swept at the end. And just very, very specific stuff on move 4 to see those end games is just really difficult. But there were actually some moves made in other games where there were also wins missed, and they were also in really obscure squares, or kind of difficult to separate from other moves. So, looking at the game so far, we've had one long match on a rule set where you might have suspected a lot of long matches, but that one long match really showed that decisive chances are available even among really good players, and I have a lot of respect for both Zelda and Sir Smokes. So my instinct is it should be a long match because the margin of error should be larger without combo. And so it should be easier to find ties. And when you have top players, that should be the case. But I think the main difference is likely to come down to, especially without combo, who's reliably calculating the endgames from turns 3 through 5. A little easier to calculate endgames from earlier on without combo, but depends on the setups, and they both go for complex stuff. This is actually, I'm really excited for this. I think this is going to be a really good match. I think I never know what to say because I really try not to be negative about players, and I don't want this to be taken negatively because I think he is great. I think one of the big differences between Deli and Tezuka is Tezuka's calculations can be really sharp and precise at distance, but they don't necessarily get sharper as you get closer to the end game. So there have been games I've played against Tezuka where Tezuka has correctly solved the end game earlier than I have, where he has correctly evaluated it and seen all the relevant and important lines sooner than I have. Yeah, Deli takes a while on the starter. There wasn't anything clean to do. But he correctly notes something I should have pointed out. Tezuka has a 6 to the left, but after that he really drops off. So Deli really should be looking to start on the left just to make it hard for Tezuka. I think this is a really uh, smart approach. He also 6-5, 6-2, and 4. Deli has covered with his blue dragon that can combo that, which is of course blue green, but that's okay. So there is only one capture that isn't comboed back 5-4, 6-4, and so Deli can maybe find ways to put pressure on that. I like this starter. Back to my chosen topic. Tezuka can often really specifically pick out key lines at distance. But as it gets closer and as it gets into pure calculate everything mode, I think he stays in calculate key variations mode. So with like 6 turns left in the game, you can do some math. No one is actually calculating everything. There are people who will claim to or claim to have, and it's not real. Like the number of lines to calculate, unless if you were calculating it out and actually calculating out everything, then you'd have to have such processing power that you would never make some mistakes every player has been seen making. So it is impossible to calculate everything with 6 moves to go unless you just have insane brain processing power. And again, that would have other implications that make it clear, at least in recorded TT history, no one does that. But that doesn't mean you can't have effectively solved with 6 turns to go because you have figured out what the key moves are and you have calculated the relevant variations, right? And I think in a sense, this is much cooler than having the pure processing power because it's not that you've actually seen everything, it's that you understand triple triads so well, you've seen everything that matters. And that's a really different claim. And to some people, it will sound less impressive, but to me, it's the much more interesting claim. It's a part of the game we don't have perfect information. I mean, you do see all the cards, but you don't have the perfect, I see everything to the end. But you have, I see everything to the end that matters. I can correctly say that move, it doesn't matter. I will not spend time on it. This move is what matters, and I will. And I think Tezuka has a real middle game strength of identifying what matters and running with that. But I think he rarely does pure calculate everything. I think he's reliant on being really, really good at identifying what matters in a position. And so that means with 6 moves to go, he plays really well because a pure calculation isn't possible. With 4 or 5 moves to go, we enter pure or close to pure calculation of everything is a lot more possible. And Tezuka makes more mistakes in that range than other top players do. Um, so I think he's really exceptional move 3 to 4. And he is relatively weak compared to other greats move 5 to 6 because he doesn't do the pure calculation. That doesn't mean he doesn't find spectacular stuff there and hasn't outplayed some of the best from there. But on average, I think he's a little weaker there and a little stronger earlier, which makes for a very interesting player. Um, because I think like move 7, 8, 9 for the top players are, automatic. They're not making mistakes there. So we can think of opening as moves 1, 2, middle game as moves 3, 4, end game as moves 5, 6. Tezuka is a phenomenal middle game player and a still way above average end game player, but a below average for the very top guys end game player. And I wonder if on a really technical rule set like same plus plus wall, being a little less technical of an endgame player will hurt with no combo in play. So my bet is Deli is going to take both. And my bet isn't going to be because Tezuka does badly there. But I think Delial's a little stronger. but also random I think favors Deli, and I think no combo favors Deli as well. So Deli should be like slight favorite in both, but I think both the rule sets also should probably favor Deli. And Deli, of course, has been playing exceptional of recent. He did just win SE. What did he win? Got him. Brain's gone. I'm trying to find where this matchup is happening. Right, so this is the finals. Um, level 4 SPPWRC. I really like both these guys. I don't want one of them to sweep the other. I would like one of them to win Triad Wars and one of them to win this. And there's a very good chance that happens. But I do think both rule sets are good for Deli. Okay, so opposite corner from Tezuka. This makes sense. He uses a card that is no play against Deli's starter, that he does have recaptures on, and notably multiple recaptures on, but within that has tricky numbers facing out, right? Deli's only capture in 2 is 1647, which Tezuka can combo back in 1. Deli has captures in 6 that can't be comboed back, but Tezuka has recaptures if needed. Deli often calls Tezuka his protege. When Tezuka came onto the scene in 2005-6, he immediately became really good. He was someone who understood the game. He's one of the fastest players to just catch what matters in triple triad and be really good at it. He's one of the like quickest, very good players, and I think 2005-6 is a pretty strong era. Um, so it's not like he was picking it up faster than everyone, but everyone was just starting out. The field was pretty good, and Tezuka like semifinals his first tournament. He's immediately on Avalanche's like Clan League Clan Wars team and part of a winning team for them. He's just immediately one of the very, very good players. And if you look back at old occult fans, they'll be like, yeah, this new guy's crazy good, right? He's in the hot and cold sections where he's either in the hot section because, yeah, he's crazy good, or he's in the cold section because he doesn't win his second or third tournament. They're like, he feels like he probably should already have won a tournament. Um, that kind of thing. So, like, just incredibly good player immediately. Um, but Deli was also an Avalanche. And or was it Triforce? Anyway, whatever it was, there was overlap there. And I don't know the details here, but I know they played a bunch together. And Deli thinks of Tezuka as like, Deli took a lot of his style from watching Nimloth play. And some of Deli's style has moved to Tezuka. And this looks to me like a move Deli himself would play, and looks to me like a really nice response of saying, you played this kind of mid-strength corner starter that creates difficulties for me and directs the game uncomfortably for me. I can do the same for you. Now maybe there's some huge setup I haven't found, but directionally I really like this move, both what it does and the specific card choice. It keeps every card Tezuka still wants to have in his hand. I get a little worried sometimes about a card getting overworked or like underworked, because if you have one card that's the card you need for every square and your other cards are dead, all they have to do is force that one card out of your hand and you have no play. And you just have to desperately try to find ways to give your other cards uses. I see Tezuka potentially being in a situation which is kind of the opposite. Of each card in his hand has one duty. He needs 5-4-6-4 for 4, because otherwise, if he takes in 4, he's comboed. He needs 6-7-1-3 for 2 and 6 to be able to safely take back without being comboed. He needs 5-3-5-6 to take an 8. He needs 6-5-6-2 to combo back 2 from 1. Right? Each of his cards has kind of one thing it's good at, and not really anything else. Okay, interesting move from Deli, because he finds a way to play in 6 where Tezuka cannot comfortably play 6-7-1-3 and 1 without getting samed. So interesting move, but I'm going to stay on my theme for a moment longer, which is oftentimes in a game, if each of your cards is good in exactly one thing, and the opponent finds some way to pass the turn, then suddenly you're in a situation where you have to use one of your cards, and suddenly one of those things you needed to do in the position, you no longer can do. and all your cards kind of only do one thing and never sweep or do enough things. And so it's sort of the situation where you don't want to be over reliant on one card, because then all the opponent has to do is force you into situations where you need to play it, and the rest of your hand is dead. But it can also be really clumsy. There was some game recently, it might have been Blizzard Slash, where but it might not have been, where each of your cards does one thing, so they're all really important, but none of them are actually good because they only do one thing each. And I could see this being a situation where Tezuka gets in trouble that way. And Delhi is already forcing situations where maybe there's only one rejoinder, right? It's the standard squares to go here are 2, 8, and 9. Some players like 4. Tezuka has a penchant for going 5. And the solver does show 1 can be a real move. So this is a very complex situation because every move is actually possible. But the main squares are 2 and 9, followed by 8. Now, 6, 7, 1, 3, and 2 allows the same in 5, and it's so hard to get counterplay after a same. It does really set up 5, 4, 6, 4. 5, 4, 6, 4 would then be really good in 4 and 8. So it is actually possible there is serious play there, and that we're writing this off too quickly. But I think we should write it off. Then there is 6, 5, 6, 2, and 2. Now, this might not be a card we need anywhere else, right? This card we were holding on to so that if our opponent went 2, we could combo in 1. It is potentially our best up-down sweeper. It's a very good up-down sweeper, but we might have to use it. 6, 5, 6, 2, and 2 seems like this is probably what has to be done there, though I do think the resulting position is scary. That may be fine. It's not clear that Delhi can go 1 there. Yeah, so I'd be drawn to 6, 5, 6, 2, and 2. What about 9? Well, 5, 3, 5, 6 is comboed and without giving you anything in 5. So I think we can rule that out. 5, 4, 6, 4, something like that is possible, trying to continue taking advantage of Delhi being weak to the right, and with the idea that it keeps better sweepers for the rest of the game. But 5, 4, 6, 4 also might be the card you're reliant on to capture in 4. But I think you can sequence that okay. I think, say, 5, 4, 6, 4, and 9, 1, 6, 4, 7, and 8. Maybe you can play 5, 3, 5, 6, and 5. You don't have last turn, so it's actually the sweeperness doesn't matter. No, I think that's pretty uncomfortable. I think if you keep 6, 5, 6, 2 for the left, 6, 2, 7, 3 sweeps you. 5, 4, 6, 4, 9 might be a tie, but it looks tricky to me. I would be leaning 6, 5, 6, 2, and 2. Then there is the question, can you go 8? Now 8, because 9 is already so valuable, you don't really need to set up there. You need to set up 5. And there's a couple ways to set up 5, specifically anything with a 5. Okay, Tezuka goes for the 9 option. All right, this was in the wheelhouse of options I thought were reasonable. It does lock in 6. I thought it was a little scarier than some other options. I thought 2 was less scary. But I think this is partially my bias towards doing things now. Uh, this move locks in 6, sort mostly, and my move in 2 locks in 3 a bit more permanently. So my instinct is do the thing with greatest onboard impact. So I'm drawn to 2 over 9. But Tezuka may also have figured out the sequence better than I did and have a better plan for 8. Delhi can also go 2, but I don't really see anything appealing in 2. Yeah, 2 doesn't look good. Occasionally you can go in like 1 or 4 or 5, but it's pretty rare. 8 is very much the main move. And Tezuka really is running Delhi out of rightward power. I'm worried about getting swept at the end. I'm worried about something like 1, 6, 4, 7, 8. Delhi would go up 6, 4, current score 5, 5. 5, 3, 5, 6, and 5 makes it 5, 5. And then Delhi goes 5, 3, 5, 6 in 2. And the point is 6, 2, 7, 3 actually sweeps 6, 5, 6, 2 there. It combos both ways. And it combos 6, 7, 1, 3, and 4. But Deli can play Tezuka can play 6, 7, 1, 3, and 1, and that should tie. There isn't a combo at the end. It's very close. 6 plus 1 does not equal 6 plus 2. So that's probably what Tezuka saw that I didn't. Um, Now, 5, 3, 5, 6, and 5, you still have to check lots of other moves. Just that one looked the scariest to me. 1 can't be scary because 1 can't set up 4, and if Deli doesn't set up 4, it's not scary. Um, so then the question is 4 scary, but 4 can't be scary because Deli never has any play going to the right. So I think Tezuka calculated this more cleanly than I did. And again, he's just a very, very good player on moves 3 and 4. I really like how Tezuka played this game. Yeah, a really nicely played game. Very good starter or tricky starter from Deli. I'm hesitant to use evaluations when we'll like flip on the solver in a moment. It'll be like, this was all terrible. You're an idiot for thinking it was really good. I think this was a really fine game of Triple Triad. I didn't think much on Deli's third turn, so I'm not sure what I think of 6, 4, 2, 6, and 6. But thinking on Tezuka's turn made it clear like 2, I think holds, but is a bit scary. 9, I think maybe holds, but is pretty scary. We didn't get to 8. I'm skeptical of 8, by the way, because 8, your point is you're setting up 6, 5, 6, 2, and 5, but then Deli has a combo back potentially in 2, because 6 plus 4 equals 6 plus 4, and you have no combo play after that. So 8 seemed pretty scary to me. Then I'd check 4 next, but I hate moves in 4, so I probably wouldn't get there. Which doesn't mean they're always wrong, just very much not my style. I do not like moves in 4, and I think they're unnecessarily risky, but they can be correct. Um, and in fact, a very annoying game I played against Deli back in the day was in a weekly open or chat tournament, whatever I'm calling them. And Deli had just a horrendously bad hand. And I went 7, and he played safely. And he played a weak corner in 3, and I played an 8 safely because, again, his hand sucked. Um, and then I realized he can go 2, and I don't have anything. I just don't win. I should win here, but I don't win if he goes 2, and Deli goes 2. Real bummer. He just like completely nullified me with a horrendous hand where he could never do anything. But the key was a move sort of setting up a Z setup, or in that case S setup. But yeah, just rotated at the same thing. Didn't put in the last move. I'm going to start bringing up the solver because I'm curious about this. I think they played really well. I think this was a very good game of Triple Triad. And like a complex one because all the numbers facing out are low and clunky in a way that made this one, I think, difficult for both players. Yeah, if they play games like this, I'm gonna be so happy to follow as much as much of their games as possible. All right, what do we see? We see 4. Deli does not go for 8. He deems it not sufficient. Instead, again, Deli plays moves less based on what it does on the board than I do, like where I'm kind of honed in on 2 or 8, something that locks something in, and more how can I attack your cards and control space. So the obvious move for Tezuka is 5, 3, 5, 6, and 8. And that's what we got to check first. That goes up 6, 4. Did Deli create a threat in 5? No. I think Deli intends to play 6, 2, 7, 3, and 5 there, making it 5, 5, and that 1, 6, 4, 7 sweeps the top, giving Deli at least a tie. I think it is just a tie. Tezuka plays 6, 5, 6, 2, not 6, 7, 1, 3 because that's combo. The 3 facing out's bad, but 6, 5, 6, 2, and 2. He takes 3. He goes up 6, 4. Deli takes back in 1. Tie. Okay. Does Tezuka have other options? Well, one thing Tezuka could do, though I don't think it's good, is go 5. I don't like the look of that. My idea is if you go something like 5-3, 5-6, and 5, either of Deli's cards that are left for one, whichever goes in 8, he takes one thing, and whatever he has left for one can't take both 2 and 4. But it not being able to take both and only able to take one will only lead to ties anyway. All right, so then there's the question of can you go 2? So many options here. And one thing appealing about 6-5, 6-2, and 2 is it sets up a same in 5. Ooh, that's interesting. That's interesting. 6-5, 6-2, 2. If Deli plays 1-6-4-7 and 1, he makes it 5-5. But Tezuka can play the same in 5, flipping so many things, and Deli somehow does not have a combo at the end. 3 plus 5 is 8, 6 plus 1 is 7, 2 plus 4 is 6. So 1-6-4-7 and 1 loses. 6-2-7-3 doesn't take 2, so Tezuka's still up 6-4. Tezuka plays the same in 5, he goes up 7-3. Deli only takes one thing back. 1 is losing. What if Deli goes 5? Well, Deli also has a same in 5. I completely missed this. All right, in that case, not a good idea. Missed that Deli had the same in 5 as well. Okay, so that's not so promising. Is there anything else interesting we could do in 2? Probably not. Okay, what about safety in 1? We haven't checked everything. Safety in 1, just 6-7-1-3 and 1. What happens? Well, I think Deli goes 8 with 1-6-4-7. You play a double capture in 5. Technically, that's a plus, but it combos nothing extra. Yeah, that's not quite it. All right, I think this ties, but it did scare me for a sec. I got all optimistic about 2 for Tezuka, but I don't think it does it. Tricky position. We will be solvering shortly. Just gonna wait for the game to end first. Yeah, like I said, we're gonna see a non-combo match between these two soon, and you might conclude that will be boring, and you would be wrong because these two players will find ways to make it interesting. I was reading about a chess world championship. I was reading a book about a player, Vishwanathan Anand, um, who wins 3 world championship matches in 2008, 2010, and 2012. And in his 2008 match, he's playing great, and everything is going swimmingly. And basically, his opponent is very well prepared and very, very good at playing slightly better positions. If he gets a slight edge with little risk, he's going to find so many ways to torment you, and you're going to have such a bad time. But not necessarily as good at dealing with complexity. And so they aimed for we're going to make every game really complicated from the get go. He's going to do the responsible. I mean, his opponent will, our opponent's Vladimir Kramnik, will go into the trickiness. Like he will do the principled thing. He will try to play the best moves, and we're going to play stuff where the best moves lead to complex positions, really complex positions, where we think we'll be better at calculating our way through it, and we won't be playing into his strengths. And they do that, and they do a really good job. And Anand and Kramnik, I think, have a kind of similar place in history. They were very similar strength players for a long time. Anand wins that match really decisively. A really impressive match win. Incidentally, I think we're expecting 1-6-4-7 and 8. Ah, no, we're not, because Tezuka has held on to 6-7-1-3, so he has the same there. Interesting. In that case, are we expecting 1-6-4-7 and 2? No, we're not. That's plus. Did I miss something? Let's check lines. Okay. 1-6-4-7 in 2 is plussed by 5-3-5-6, and Tezuka wins. 1-6-4-7 and 8 is samed by 6-7-1-3 and 5, and Tezuka wins. 1-6-4-7 in 5 makes it 5-5, and Deli has a plus in 2. But then Tezuka plays 2, and Deli doesn't have enough captures. Tezuka plays 2, capturing 3. So Deli cannot play 6273, 1647 first. He starts. Wait, what the hell just happened? Now Deli wins? Wait, was Deli just winning? Why didn't Tezuka play 5-3, 5-6, and 5? I'm so confused. I don't get it at all. Something weird just happened. I'm so confused. Okay, let's. I mean, I must have missed something just enormous here. I don't know what just happened, and we're gonna pop over to the solver. He can't have misclicked because 6713 in 5 didn't work. He needed to use 5356 unless I'm completely gone, which I might be, because it seems more likely than that Tezuka's completely gone. But what happened? I'm so confused. All right, so I'm flipping open the solver. Delial wins 7-3 somehow. No idea. Um, I mean, I must have missed something. I must just like be missing a plus. Okay, let's switch over to the solver. Solver. Okay. Nice move in 7. I like this move a lot. I think tough position for Tezuka. He goes 6-5, 5-4, and 3. I like this a lot. I'm running it, and currently there weren't very many ties against the starter, or weren't a ton. Now it's looking like more, but this looks like a very good reply. Deli attacks with 6-4, 2-6, and 6. And Tezuka has 7 ties, which is relatively low. I thought he should go 6-5, 6-2, and 2, which does tie. I was curious about going in 8. I wasn't sure of this. My guess was it was bad. No, that ties too. Interesting. Okay. And Tezuka goes in 9, which was the other square I considered a common choice. And this ties as well. I thought the main line was 1, 6, 4, 7, and 8, but this loses. Ah, I missed this. I missed this. Yeah, this loses. Yeah. Ah, totally missed 2 as an option. That's a really cool move. Missed that at distance. So Deli very smartly avoids that. Great move by Deli. And now most moves tie. Right? So what was I expecting? I was expecting 5-3, 5-6, and 8, which ties. You have to go 5. I thought 5-3, 5-6, and 5 probably ties as well. It does. I was hyped for 6-7-1-3, but then or sorry, 6-5-6-2 here. But then I noticed Deli is the same in 5. But that's also just a tie, right? And then Tezuka played 6-5-6-2, and 1, which I got excited about. Deli plays the only tie. And now all Tezuka needs to do is play 5-3, 5-6 somewhere. He must have missed the same here for some reason. This is one of the latest misses we have ever seen from a top player. And what's interesting is I think Tezuka played a fantastic game to this point. I think he took a game where he was a little behind and ended up having the pressure. This is something Deli's really good about. Deli often has games where he is behind early, and by the end, it's his opponent having to make only moves to tie. And I think that was what Tezuka did here. I think he played a great game. And then just you put this card anywhere and you tie. Well, that's so if there was no same, this would win, right? Because it only takes four. So we have to assume just same turned off in his brain. That's a real shame because I think he played a legitimately great game here. My brain was not gone. It was his brain that was gone, kind of sadly. But that's a shame, especially in the finals of something. Though not a major or anything. But I think that sort of fits with what I was saying. Of Tezuka is incredibly good understanding and feel, and not always as precise. So this went weird later than I could have imagined. Um, yeah, so Tezuka says LOL and is amused that he blew that. Yeah, that's fair. Like, what are you gonna do? Sometimes you do not see a same, and that's a funny way for it to end. Honestly, great game till then. Really well played by both players. Um, so yeah, that's weird. Um, that's a weird game. Weird game. Uh, Credit to both for playing really well till whatever it was that happened there. And we will end our video on this beautiful black